Welcome everyone, today we have a new build guide for Diablo 4. In this video, we're going to have a look at a new Necromancer that is able to clear solo for Nightmare Dungeon 100. So what is happening over here is, a few of my viewers have sent me this Reddit post, and this was just out for 4 hours ago, and this is from NECROMANCER. So if you come over to NECROMANCER's YouTube channel, he does have some really good guide to review this one. And what I recommend is, if you haven't seen the video, definitely check it out. He also has some really good notes. So I'll briefly show you guys a small clip of his preview, and then we're going to learn his build together. So he does provide a very interesting Necro build, which I want to play Necros as my second class. So briefly have a look at NECROMANCER's build. So what he is doing is, he's not using any core spells. Keep that in mind, he's not using core spells. He's using one basic spell and also Blood Mist with Corpse Explosion. This allows him to do tremendous damage as he spawns corpses. So the cornerstone of the spell is not using any resource, and also he's gonna pull enemies together, debuff them with the Equip, and then use Corpse Tendrils. And he is doing tremendous amount of shadow damage. Yes, you can see he is only clearing level 67 over here, and that was 4 days ago in one of the demonstration videos. So today, because a viewer showed me the Reddit post, he's like, "Oh Matt, you got to make this build and explain it to us." And previously we have made a build about the Nightmare Dungeon clear with the Druid, level 100 solo. So just a small touch up on the Druid. If you look at the Druid build, guys, Blizzard have nerfed the Druid. Yes, I don't get it why. So this is the thing. So about 12 hours ago, since the recording of this video, Blizzard have nerfed the Druid. It's not because of me, right? Of course it's not because of me. I just made a video to teach people about Druid. I do not want to get Necro nerfed, but we'll be learning how to build a Necro build that is very achievable, that can clear Nightmare Dungeon 100 solo. And this is really epic. Now, before we dive into the video, I want to say a big thank you for NECROMANCER for sharing this video, and I have the links of both of his guide on the video available. So he has made a guide on level 100 Nightmare Clear, and he provides some interesting insights and also ways he got his gears. He did get some of his gears by trading on the market, and while you guys are buying gears on the market, be careful guys, don't use real money to buy gears, and also if you're trading a large sum of gold, be a little careful because of the Blizzard ban wave. So yes, make sure you check out NECROMANCER's videos for more explanation and also more gameplay details of this particular Necro build that can achieve level 100 clear for the Nightmare Dungeons. Now, similar to all of our build videos, I'll be working with Mobilitics and also provide you guys with a cheat sheet of the summary of the spells and also the abilities and also the choice of legendaries. So make sure you guys check the links below, and we'll be updating this build for you guys very soon. Now coming over to the default builder for the Necromancer with a Shadow Mist build. Now one of the first things I want to show you guys is, notice that our friend NECROMANCER, he has provided the default builder, and notice that his Paragon is very different to the Chinese Druid Paragon. The Chinese Druid used 6 board, and it's like a butterfly, and while our friend over here is using just 4 board. Plus the initial board, he's using 4 board. This is quite interesting, right? Because he's perking out everything on 3 different boards. Compared to over here, they're using 6 board. Well, if both of those classes can clear Nightmare Dungeon 100 solo, I really like the variety and also the build design for different classes with the Paragon board. Now again guys, if you do want to go over to NECROMANCER's video, he does provide some explanations of his build as well. So we're also learning together with him. So coming over to the gear choices and also the choices of the legendaries. There are 2 unique items that he's currently using by his build. The first one is going to be a Hold from Below, which allows, instead of instantly detonating the Corpse Explosion, this will summon a voided skeleton that charges at random enemies and explode. Corpse Explosion's damage is increased by 40%. So this is one of the unique buffs you do want for this build. Now secondly, over here our friend also says he's using the unique item, the Black River, which allows Corpse Explosion to consume up to 4 additional corpses than the initial corpses, and deal increased amount of damage and also radius per corpse explode. And this allows him to do even more damage with Corpse Explosion. Now briefly going over the offensive and also defensive codex. So here you can see on the offhand, he's going with the Shadow Key passive, which allows the Shadow Blight key, each time it deals damage, you will increase the next Shadow Blight damage deal by about 40%, and they stack up to 5 times. So we're going to come over to the skill tree very soon. The Shadow Blight, you're going to see a lot over here. It is a keener cornerstone passive at level 35, which allows him to deal more shadow damage, and the more shadow damage he deals, the more he deals. Now as for the rings, the first ring or the second ring, he's going to convert Bone Storm to deal shadow damage, which allows him to trigger the shadow the Shadow Blight passive more often and also provides defensive and also offensiveness with Bonestone. So he's converting all the spells into shadow damage, and this is the key part. The second ring is that the Blood Mist will provide a trail of damage of shadow damage. This also unhinders your movement when you cast Blood Mist. Now quickly coming over to the cornerstone of the Blood Mist triggers Corpse Explosion. This allows him, just like back in beta, with a much nerfed cooldowns, this allows him to kind of uses the corpse when he casts Blood Mist. Blood Mist will provide him with invulnerability and also triggers corpses, which dedicates them for more damage, and also this allows him to, becomes invulnerable, which is very powerful, both defensive and also offensive. Now if you have a look at the amulet, he's recommending to use the Shadow Blade increased damage with a key passive after damaging the enemies 10 times, up to 120% more of this effect because it's on the amulet. Now I do believe in his videos, which I do recommend you have a look if you plan to build Necro for 100 levels, he was recommending that if you find yourself to needing of more defensiveness, you can come over here and grab the defensive passive, which gives you up to 75% armor onto this particular amulet. Yes, you'll be losing one offensive Codex, probably not this one, or he's going to switch this somewhere, right? But you'll be getting the 75% increased armor to push for the higher levels to be more durable. Now for the current build, he's recommending to use the defensive Codex on one of the defensive pieces of gears. So for the chest armor, you can go to the 50% increased armor when you deal damage to enemies. And this is one of the best defensive items for all the classes. Almost every class uses this one. And the gloves and also weapons are unique, of course. We talk about the helmet. So now as for the pants. So now when Bonestone deals damage to enemies, you'll be providing and also generating a barrier. Every class wants a bit of barrier, and this is a very good way to be getting barriers based on your maximum life. And finally, while unstoppable, he'll be gaining more movement speed and also going through enemies, which allows him to be more mobile and also to be more defensive, escaping from enemies. Now as for the sockets of the gems, he's going with increased damage over time, increase of maximum life, which allows him to scale with higher barriers, and also increase of armor. Most of the classes do want armor because this is one of the best scaling, because the combination of armor together with the increase of 50 to 75% more armor, depending where you craft this legendary. Now in terms of the summons of the Book of the Dead, he's going to sacrifice all of the minions, which provide him with 10% increased shadow damage and also 15% increased vulnerability damage. Finally, he's going to sacrifice the golems for 10% maximum life. Now before we jump over to the skill trees, what I just want to show you guys is his choices of skills. He's using one basic spell, he's using Corpse Tendrils, Corpse Explosion, and also Blood Mist. After that, he's also using Decrypt and also Bonestone. Notice that he is not using a core spell, guys. This is very interesting and very creative. I always like creative builds, me, the Thorn Barbarian, all the strange and creative builds. I love those. And this is one of the reasons when I saw this one, I was like, oh my god, he can clear 100 with this. We got to make a build guide about this. And of course, guys, if you do watch his video, you can notice there's some changes to the skills, but just the positioning, I believe. So the current builder still works fine. So coming over to the skill tree for the 100% Necro solo clear. Now right away, he's going to go to Rip. Now Rip will allow his scythe to attack enemies and provide him with a damage reduction by 15%. This will also increase his attack speed, which I don't think will be that useful for the Necro for this particular build, but this will also summon corpses. So the major ability for the Rip is going to be summoning corpses, and this allows him to become more defensive and also more offensive with the corpses. Now one thing I forgot to mention is that I had a brief watch of NECROCAP's video, and he was saying that to push for higher levels, he was using this particular legendary codex, and this can be found with the dry steps. And this one's quite interesting with a combination of his choice of basic spells, which provide him with additional 20% damage reduction. I do believe he mentioned a part of his videos, and I do recommend having a look at this one into more details if you guys would want to learn his build. So together with the 20% and also the 15% damage reduction, this spell is very defensive. This is how he starts the fight, and this is how he summons corpses for more damage and also more utility. Now the second tree, this is wonderful, right? The second tree, he's not using any core spells, but rather he's making use one of the best chance of summoning more corpses with Healed Flash into 3 levels, which allows him to have a 24% chance of against bosses with lucky percent to summon more corpses, which is incredible for a single boss fight. Now for the Macabre section, he is going with 5 points into Blood Mist and also 5 points into Corpse Explosion. The upgrade for the Blood Mist allows him to leave behind corpses, which is very good for the triggering of the corpses with his helmet. And of course, this also have a bit of overpower, but I don't think this is the biggest thing. Now for the Corpse Explosion. Because he's going with a Shadow Necromancer, the Corpse Explosion damage is now converted to Shadow damage over time. This is very important for the Keystone passive and also for his combination of spells. So this is the major source of damage that is combined into the Blood Mist and also into other spells. Over here, we'll be consuming corpses for additional essence, which we don't need. But we'll also be consuming corpses for 9% more damage. This is what we wanted for the Necromancer for the corpse build. Now 1 point will be going to Decrypt. And here Decrypt will provide us with a chance of stunning enemies, and also Decrypt have a chance of lowering the spell's cooldowns. So what other spells that uses cooldowns will be Blood Mist, and also there will be also Corpse Tendrils, and finally we'll be looking at the Bone Storm. Those 3 spells can be lower cooldowns with a lucky hit chance. Now the lucky hit chance is going to be a major factor for this particular build, so you want to look into this for your gears. Now 5 points will be allocated into Corpse Tendrils, which allows him to pull enemies and also stuns them. Now here the Corpse Tendrils will slow enemies while they pulled and also makes them vulnerable, which allows him to deal most of the damage. Because he's not using a core spell, he doesn't have a source of vulnerability, and this allows him to do that. Over here we do have 1 point into Necrotic Carapace, which allows him to have some form of fortify for his particular build. Now all the points will be invested over here for the Shadow Necromancer, which allows him to gain more movement speed. Over here 1 point to have a chance of stunning enemies, and also here increased damage of his shadow spells, which stacks. And finally, even more increased damage to enemies who are slowed to the shadow spells. Now as for the ultimate, he's picking Bone Storm and also converting Bone Storm into the darkness spells with one of the legendary codex, if you guys remember. So here we'll be gaining additional damage reduction and also additional chance of critical strike, which is very powerful against most of the bosses. And we'll be going with Standalone, which allows him to have more damage reduction with less minions. And here again, he's going to increase the sacrificial bonus from the sacrificial minions by 60%. So this is the choice if you're sacrificing your minions. Now finally, the cornerstone that brings everything together is going to be the Shadow Blight. Shadow Blight allows him to deal increased damage, and also this creates additional shadow effect that deals damage over time. So this triggers as you deal more shadow damage. This is why he's got multiple sources of dealing shadow damage with Bone Storm over here, and also with Corpse Explosion, and also with a Blood Mist that triggers Corpse Explosion. And even his basic spells are the darkness spells, which allows him to deal more shadow damage, and also more procs of those. Now over here, while I was watching the video briefly to understand the build concept and everything, I do hear NECROCRABS mentioning something special about his helmet. So what NECROCRABS is saying is, I also actually did some research and study. So he's using this method from the anime over here, which he is saying that as a Necromancer, he wanted lucky hit chance. So what that means is, notice that there's a lot of unlucky hit chance we want to proc, especially with the increase of corpses. So this particular guide explains, reveals that you can be using an alt character for the sources to be enchanting yourself with a helmet of increased lucky hit chance. So if you look at NECROCRABS' video, he's going to demonstrate that his helmet have increased lucky hit chance. And well, he's got a barrier, I believe. And what that means is, he is making use of 2 classes combination to roll into a stat that allows him to be even stronger with his lucky procs of the Necromancer. I don't know if that's intentional design, but this is a very good use for the endgame build for the Necromancer. So make sure you check out this particular guide, the method he's using for lucky hit procs, for the barrier on the helmet. And then you have a look at NECROCRABS' build and also choices for items. Now if you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates, and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4. Now coming over to the Paragons for this creative Necromancer. So what you're going to see is, at the start he's going to take increased damage, maximum life, and coming back over here for maximum life and also resistance. As for the first glyph, he's going to use the rare glyph that allows him to deal damage to vulnerable enemies to increase his damage. And this glyph will be max level to at least 15, of course, at least 20 if you guys can make it. And you can see over here, he is benefiting for all the dexterity glyphs over here and perking into both of the armors and also the increased damage. he's taking the left hand side, and once he come over to the next board, it is going to be the legendary board with Wither, which allows his shadow damage over time have a lucky hit chance of 5% chance to deal 50% more damage, and this will increase with more willpower you have. And this is actually quite interesting for the shadow build. You can see that while he's pathing over here, he's going with some rare glyph that reduces damage and also additional damage over time for the shadow damage. Now the second glyph of choice will be another rare glyph that allows his character to deal more shadow damage. That allow his character to deal 10% more shadow damage over time with a special effect, and this also increases the shadow damage he deals with every bit of willpower purchase in the zone. So we can see over here, he can also deal more shadow damage, and over here, he went for the rare knot to increase more shadow damage. Notice that the first board will focus on dealing shadow damage, and this is going to be essential. Finally, on this board, he's going with the shadow damage dealt to elite monsters and also shadow damage over time again. And if he has enough dexterity, he can get more bonus of shadow damage. Now the second board of choice is the legendary board for the Flash Eater, which allows him to consume 5 corpses to deal 40% more damage. This is pretty straightforward, right? The build is focused on the corpse explosion. Now the glyph of choice is gonna be the rare glyph that allows him to deal more damage to slowed and chilled enemies, and even more damage against stunned enemies. He can be slowing enemies with Decrypt, he can be stunning enemies with Corpse Tendril, which allows him to deal even more damage, and with a high intelligence against crowd control enemies, he will deal more damage. Now what you're going to notice is a lot of the players that's pushing for level 100 are finding the poison the boss for the blind borrows, the bosses that is poison. So here you can see a lot of players for 100 is getting into poison resistance, and this was the case for the Chinese player that cleared with the level 100 for the solo Druid. So you can see something that's similar. This is why they go for poison resistance. And over here we have more damage against elites and also more resistance with all elements. Now as we path over to the next board, we have increased critical strike damage and also damage against injured enemies. And the final board of choice over here is while there's at least 2 corpses, you'll gain damage reduction by 15%. When there are no corpses, you'll deal 15% more damage. Notice that there's only 3 board and it's fully perked out into most of the goodies. Now over here we'll be going with the glyph, another rare glyph of course, so whenever you or your minion deal shadow damage, enemy will be dealing reduced damage by 10%. So this is more defensive while increasing your shadow damage for every bit of willpower purchased in the zone. Now over here we'll be getting more rare glyph for the increased armor and also increased damage against injured enemies. Finally, because we'll be going with pretty much all the goodies on this board, we get all the rare knots for the increased critical damage, and also over here with the resistance, maximum life, and also over here damage against healthy enemies, more critical damage, and finally more damage against injured enemies, which allows him to be more durable while dealing more damage towards most of the types of enemies. So this is interesting, right? Because again, notice that this is only 3 board, and plus the first one. But if you look at the Chinese player, he went to the butterfly style into 6 different board. And let me know what you guys think about those boards. And if you guys have a good board, let me know as well. I really like the designs of the board, and they're very creative. You can go with 3 board or you can go with 6 boards over here with the Druid. Now finally, coming over to a bit of the skill rotations with Necrocap's build. Now I do recommend having a look at his videos for more explanations, but we're briefly trying to understand what is happening, right? So usually with engagement, he can start with a Bone Storm, and also he can start with a Blood Mist, which makes him invulnerable. And while he's there, he can also use the basic spells and also decrypt to slow enemies and weakens them. And while he's doing that, he's killing everything and also lowering his cooldowns with Decrypt. And while he's doing that, he can also reduce the damage he takes with the basic spells. There's no core spells. Very amazing, right? And very, very powerful. Oh boy, now I want to play Necromancer. I want to play every build that's not Barbarian. So sad, right? Because they keep nerfing the poor Bob. I'm going to find a Barbarian solo Nightmare Dungeon 100. I'm going to make a build on this one. We're going to learn that together. I'm going to change my build into that one for sure. Now, because I plan to showcase and also share a lot of good builds with you guys, if you guys do have an interesting and also wonderful build, make sure you send me a message on Discord. We can work through making a clip for the video and also demonstrating to the viewers out there to show you an amazing build and also a creative build. So make sure guys, if you have a great build on any of the classes, Necromancer, Druids and also Sources, let me know in the comments, and also let me know on Discord. So we'll get your build sorted and share it with the community to see how powerful your build is, and it doesn't have to be a meta build. Now, in case you guys didn't know, I'll be live streaming on Twitch again, and I have just started. So make sure to come over to the links below to join us on Twitch live to say hi, maybe ask me questions or share any tips with the viewers. And while you're here, make sure you follow. And if you do have your Twitch Prime, this is a really good time to use your Twitch Prime over here, supporting us with Twitch Prime. And yes guys, join us as I test build for Diablo, and also join us as you play the game and also farm the game. So stay a while and also listen. We'll also be doing some giveaways and also special viewer events in the Diablo as well. Maybe we do PvP and also related events in the game as we get to the end game, and also help players to go through the dungeons.